Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's last segment on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. We are going to come to you with a very nice little last segment to conclude the week with a nice little redemption story of a tight end who, after leaving the New York Giants, sorry, New York Giants fans, you might want to cover your ears for this particular segment, and moving to Jacksonville, he truly has gained comfortability in a system that really appreciates him for his route running. And I truly believe this guy's going to be in contention for the tight end one position for years to come. But a lot of people are continuing to forget about him. So let's go over the fantasy player profile of Mr. Evan Engram. 1 second as I switch this graphic. Now, Evan Engram, like I said, had a very hard start to his career in New York. Maybe it's the whole media circus, as it always is in a New York atmosphere. But whatever happened in New York, he truly dispelled and disproved when he went to Jacksonville and said, hey, I actually am a very good tight end, and has quickly turned into one of the top tight ends in this league right now. And he's one of those guys who really kind of melds both of those eras of tight ends together. He's kind of the bridge between both of these groups because he's not necessarily the youngest of tight ends, but he's not necessarily old enough to be Travis Kelce or George Kittle. So right now, Evan Engram is like the guy you might want to covet at the tight end position. But funnily enough, I don't think enough people talk about him as a tight end one. But looking at the stats, they prove it themselves, so let's go over them. Throughout his career, he's accumulated 611 fantasy points. Last year was his best year, 116.3 fantasy points. The tight end 6 in 2022 in terms of PPR as well, and the tight end 2 last year. Another interesting statistic you might want to know is that in terms of catches, he had 114, and it beat his previous career high by 41. So he's increasing his production at an astounding rate. And if you're a PPR nerd like myself, then you should consider that kind of production at the tight end position because it doesn't get any better than that. Career high 963 receiving yards, although there was a career low in yards per catch, maybe because, as we all know, the Jaguars' offense kind of stagnated towards the end of the year, and nothing was really working, and Trevor Lawrence was just trying his best to get to Evan Engram, but it didn't really work out. But to kind of sum up why Evan Engram is such a special player, 4 games with double-digit receptions, 8 games with 7 or more receptions. So overall, he is one of those guys who really needs to be in the conversation, not just the Sam Laportas, Travis Kelce's of the world. Evan Engram needs to be in the discussion. Next year, the fantasy projections aren't as good as people might think. 802 for 4 touchdowns, 102.7 fantasy points. And that's a little bit low, I think, in my opinion, because we're going to talk about this a little bit in this segment. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars offense are kind of a mirage. They're being viewed through rose-colored glasses as a lot of potential, but I think that in terms of the wide receiver room, they're all too focused and similar in same categories. And so without further ado, let's jump right into why I think Evan Engram is going to be more than just undervalued. He truly is going to be in the conversation for the tight end one position. So, as we all know, this is a very pivotal year for Trevor Lawrence. He could earn a lot of money. He's looking for a very big contract, wants to be one of the highest paid kind of third-year, fourth-year quarterbacks in the league. He's seeing that Tua is getting a long extension, so he's like, hey, why not me? And he really wants to establish himself. But when I look at the skill position talent around him and what he has at disposal, I see 3 guys that are really too similar to kind of differentiate themselves and stand out in their own unique ways. I look at Christian Kirk, who's perhaps going to be the wide receiver one next year. I don't really know. And all I see from Christian Kirk is speed. I don't necessarily see contested catch ability. I don't necessarily see savvy route running. I definitely don't see a guy who is very varied in what he does. And I think that leads to the detriment of what Trevor Lawrence is allowed to do. Furthermore, you acquire two guys, Gabe Davis from Buffalo and Brian Thomas Jr. from the draft, who are also known for this skill. Perhaps Gabe Davis is more of a solid route runner, but like I said, in that system last year where, Stephon Diggs kind of got frustrated, he had to become the deep threat, and I feel like he's become more comfortable getting that level of verticality that an offense would want. Maybe that's why Jacksonville drafted him, but still, Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis are still similar because they both want to get down the field. Christian Kirk through speed, Gabe Davis just because he wants to get in that verticality and he's more familiar with it. And then last but not least, when I look at Brian Thomas Jr., I look at another guy who was more known for his going post routes and being explosive than, just running routes. And coming out of LSU, which was a very exciting offense to watch, I don't think he's really keen to the understanding that football is more about the simple things and the detailed things. And so that leads to the unsung hero of this Jaguar skill position group, New York Giants fans yet again, cover your ears, but Evan Engram. Evan Engram, when you think about it, is really the Jaguars' best route runner. He's the guy who's like, okay, I see Christians going up this way. He is not necessarily, cutting inside, fooling receivers, wanting to make moves to get open. Then, who knows what Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. are going to bring to this offense. Maybe they'll add some variety, but at the current moment, I really don't think so. And then it falls in Evan Engram's lap to be like, hey, where's the variations? Where's the diversity in route trees? And where's the complexity to our offense? Because right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are falling down a slippery slope in the AFC South. Houston is here to stay. Indy is a question, but a very solid question because Anthony Richardson certainly looks like, from the small amount of games we saw him in, like he's here to stay. Where is Jacksonville without route runners? Because in the AFC, right, it seems to me like teams definitely covet speed as one of those skills that you want in a wide receiver. But they're also realizing that you can't necessarily get certain traits from just one person. That's why they're going out. This, from Jacksonville, while I like Gabe Davis as a receiver, and while I think Brian Thomas Jr. is certainly one of the more underrated wide receivers from this draft class, I don't necessarily think they'll help Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence just wants a guy who's always open. And I know it's kind of cliche, kind of a through line with all of these wide receiver, tight end related player profiles, but it's true. If I were a quarterback in the NFL, I would just want a guy who get open. I wouldn't want a guy who's just going to run down the field. What does that say about my arm strength? I might get called into question because I can't get it to that guy, when in reality, I just want guys who can run that route, but also can be like, hey, I see that this defender may be playing me a bit deeper, I'm going to cut inside. And so, that's why I think Evan Engram is really being underestimated in this tight end market, because you really have guys in much better offenses, especially guys like Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce, who are very valued, but still could prove to decline, because on one end of the spectrum, we don't necessarily know what to make of Sam Laporta's rookie season, because who knows if he's going to sustain that throughout an entire NFL career. And Travis Kelce is already showing signs of decline. And so someone has to bridge that gap in the tight end fantasy market, so why not Evan Engram? And, to sum it all up, I really think that stressing the tight end position is going to be a very kind of muddying thought for fantasy managers everywhere. I don't want you to get in your mind that you have to get a tight end. I'm just saying that expand your palette, in terms of the tight end position. Because you know that Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce are going to go higher than they should. And so you have to get out of the mindset of, I have to go for a top-end guy. I have to go for a Travis. I have to go for a Mark Andrews. I have to go for a George Kittle. You can find a guy in the median, like Evan Engram, and all be set. And that's something you have to really value, because if you don't, then Evan Engram might go, and he might have a fantastic season, and that will be that for you. So the importance of understanding your fantasy markets is what will separate you from other players, because I can just sit here and give you these fantasy profiles. It's really up to you to understand the mindset that I'm presenting them from. And that is all I have to say on that. But that should just about do it for today's show. Please consider liking, following, subscribing to the show. It's a huge support to both me and my fellow podcasters and the network as a whole. Consider leaving a tip or donation to the link gsmc.cloud. Is a huge support as well to me and my fellow podcasters and the network as a whole. Anything you leave is greatly appreciated. I have been Chris Shepard. This has been the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. We'll be back and better than ever to close out the week tomorrow on this show. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in.